season or final week of the regular season, which was crazy enough. But leading up to the playoffs last year, as you alluded to, John was having a bad year, and there was something I was missing. So of course, we kind of he reached out to me, and we kind of started negotiating a trade, in which involved Christian McCaffrey. I ended up sending him a second round pick and a couple other little things here and there to include players like Jeff Wilson and things like that. So, anyways, coming into this year's draft, it was, obviously I get the number one overall pick, but then I didn't have my next pick till number 25. And it was like, all right, I have one pick in the first two rounds, three in the first four, four in the first, or five in the, no, four in the first six rounds. I was like, I got to do something. I've got to at least acquire another pick. So pretty much what happened was I sent the message out to the entire fantasy group. Yourself and Mr. John Olson reached out to me, submitted trade proposals, and based on the fact that John had a little more to offer, he was offering, his package was a little stronger. We started the negotiation process. He's sitting there with the number three pick, and I'm sitting there with the number one pick, and my goal was to acquire another pick in the first four rounds. Moving back two spots does not require me to go acquire a second round pick or even a third round pick. So I said, hey, John, how about this? How about we swap first round picks, number one and three? I drop down to the number three spot. He acquires my number one, and in return, I get the number or a fourth round pick as well as a 12th round pick, and he would get an a 10th round pick and an eighth round pick. So when you really level it out, and there are actually fantasy value charts that say
to the viewers, just put on the closed captions and pause the video a couple of times, and you'll be able to capture what every part of this.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just one of those. It was a trade, but what I can say, I might not be done. I might not be done. I might be working on another trade. I'm not going to give any specifics about that right now. It's wheeling and dealing time, man. Our fantasy draft is a little over 48 hours away, and I've got to position myself to at least be in the competition to not only defend the trophy that I share with you, but also while John does have three second round picks, as well as two fourth round picks.
It's unprecedented in terms of early value, how many picks the commissioner has. I was testing the water when I said, hey, this is what I'll offer you. I had no real intentions of making a deal, but I guess for my own amusement, I wanted to see how serious you were. If you were just talking crazy, obviously a deal has been made. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how all this pans out. But I will say this to you, John Olson. If you do not win this league this year, this is going to look like a gargantuan fail, similar to Uncle Stevie's Mets, similar to Hal's Yanks. New York has not been a good place for baseball this year. We're going to hit on them in a little bit.
It would be up there with USA beating Russia in the 80s and in the Olympics. It would be an upset like that. Now, what's to say, if he does suffer with injuries, then obviously that doesn't count, because you draft the players with the hopes that they play 15 to 17 games, or at least play everything.
It's a weird dynamic because John doesn't have a pick for 4 consecutive rounds. Well, maybe now he does, now that you guys struck a deal. But it's really a top-heavy layout. So I'm still a firm believer that regardless of what equity you have, if you make the right picks and your guys stay healthy, you're going to have a good year if you know what you're doing. I myself am picking – I myself am picking in the 9th spot. PPR league, we carry 3 receivers in addition to a flex position. So there's a potential to have 4 wide receivers in your starting lineup. Some people like to go 2 tight ends if you can get 2 of the dynamic ones. Mm-hmm. But definitely with the PPR league and with a pass happy league, similar to real life, I think in a fantasy league it also devalues running backs to a level. Shout out to my dad for a moment. He was actually tied for the lead in this league for overall championships prior to his, untimely passing. He was actually going to host the fantasy league that year. Unfortunately, we lost him roughly about 3-4 days before our draft. But no, a fun league to play in. Has a lot of history because a lot of guys that have been in this league knew my dad for a ton of years. And a lot of funny stories because my dad was always that guy that was going to get on you if you made a horrific pick. Shout out, Brett. And to cross it over into fantasy baseball,
We don't
Brett
have to talk about that.
Brett once picked a dead guy. That really happened.
Well,
Brett thought he was getting the steal of the draft. I'm not going to name him because it's not necessary, but he was dead at the time that Brett picked him. And my father was like, Brett, he's fucking dead. And then Brett, quoting 90s movies as he's been known for, is like, well, cross him off then, Pops. Just cross him off.
hey, and it's funny too because we're sitting there. John sends out a message about the current keepers. Obviously, I'm keeping Brian Robinson, and I have to keep Dallas's defense.
I'm keeping Deshaun Watson in my case round 12. In our league, just to let you know, round 10 and after is your freezes.
And I can't complain. I'm getting Dallas with the 18th pick. That's a good pick because they're going in the first 8 rounds in most fantasy drafts. And of course, keeping Brian Robinson gives me a solid number 2 running back. But it's just as he's announcing all the keepers, we start dogging on Brett, talking about, he's going to keep Des Bryant and Andrew Luck, and who knows, he might. And I made a comment saying, with his 3rd round pick, he's probably going to go pick Robert Kraft's masseuse.
And to no surprise, in Tom Brady's final season in the NFL, Brett had him not just on his team, but as his starting quarterback. So I guess you guys can figure the kind of year that Brett had last year. I'm just going to put him on Front Street. Sorry, buddy, if you're watching, or maybe you'll be watching on the ride home. Brett has owned the exclusive rights to the worst record in this league for 2 consecutive seasons because after a great first year in the league, my buddy in New York, Richie Dorney, had a terrible second year where he went for the gusto. He tried to win the championship 2 years ago. He traded his 1st round pick. And as we said, we trade draft picks. So Dorney had a rough year. But in the consolation bracket, he was able to beat Brett to push Brett down to the bottom for 2 consecutive years. And unlike real football, you don't get high draft picks for finishing on the bottom. Brett will be picking 8th, and I will be picking 9th. And I believe Idris is like right behind me at 10. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
And it's crazy too because I think we're going to see a situation where you're going to want Travis Kelce at 9. Brett's going to take him. Idris is probably going to want Saquon at 10. You'll probably take him. And then what's to say you go receiver instead, and for perhaps a Stephon Diggs or Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I got news for you. I'm taking the fan hat off when I approach this. In my other league, which is also a Yahoo league with John, I'm actually freezing Saquon Barkley in that league. That league, it doesn't stop you as, like, say if you drafted a guy in whatever round. It is you name your freezes and then the draft starts with your draft position. I believe I'm drafting 7th in that. Saquon Barkley is my keeper. My other league, shout out to my boy Zach. I was a first-year guy there. I will be freezing Aaron Rodgers in that league. And in a league that you played in once, it's kind of an unconventional one with the 2 quarterbacks, the 2 defenses, the 2 kickers. I'm a 2-time champion in that league. No freezes there. But in that league, the scoring is a little different where your defenses and your quarterbacks really make up a big part of the scoring. So in that particular one, I'll be gunning for guys like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, the elite quarterbacks. And also we'll have my eye out on elite defenses, whether it be your Dallas Cowboys, maybe the 49ers, maybe even the Jets. But I wanted to ask you this, since we are on the topic of fantasy. What are some fantasy sleepers coming into the new year? I said according to Richie, so I got one for you. I don't like naming Giants. I just don't. I hate naming New York Giants for fantasy purposes, unless if it's like the running back or now the tight end. First time we had a quality tight end in fantasy since probably Jeremy Shockey. It's been a long time that the Giants had a fantasy go-getter at tight end. Jalen Hyatt, I do believe, as a late round pick. What do we do, 18 rounds? I think Jalen Hyatt is definitely a quality pick. Plus, it would be a freeze for someone willing to go that route. I think he's been the most impressive receiver during the preseason thus far. Quite the highlight show during practices. Now, granted, this isn't playing a real defense. It's not the same thing. But I do believe Jalen Hyatt is definitely going to bring a lot of excitement to the Giants as a rookie. So he is one of my potential sleepers this year.
I've got a couple of them. I'll start with the running back position. Well, first of all, I'll say this. With the recent acquisition of Dalvin Cook by the New York Jets, I am staying away from the likes of Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook. Breece Hall, obviously he is coming off that torn ACL, but you're bringing in a guy like Dalvin Cook. That is a guy that's going to take away a lot of touches. I think
you're looking at two guys rushing for under 1,000.
Yeah, exactly. And
because you got to factor in Michael Carter as well.
Mm-hmm. And I made a mention to that the other day to my buddy Matt. Shout out to him. And I said, I would love to see Dallas pick up the phone and contact the Jets about a possible deal for a Michael Carter, because while I love Tony Pollard and I love Deuce Vaughn, I think he's going to be an exciting element to our offense. We still need a guy that can play on third down, and I like what Michael Carter can bring to Cowboys offense. Will it happen? Probably not, but it's just one of those that I like to see. But as far as the sleeper pick goes, I've got to go with Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's going into a great situation in Seattle. You're putting him right into the slot, and defense has already got to worry about a DK Metcalf and a Tyler Lockett. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, if it wasn't for an injury-plagued year, would have been the first receiver drafted and would have probably been a top 10 draft pick in this year's draft. I think he's going to come right into that offense and hit the ground running. Just someone I would really keep an eye on. I think it's going to allow the Seattle Seahawks to move on from Tyler Lockett after this season. But he's just a guy that I think is going to be very explosive in this offense, and he's got an explosive first step. And as a DB, especially a nickel cornerback, if you bite on that first step, you're beat, and he's gone. Another guy that I'm really high on this year is actually Zach Charbonnet, rookie running back out of UCLA that was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. Exactly. It's weird that I'm going with two Seahawks here. I love Kenneth Walker. However, he is not much of an element in the passing game where Zach Charbonnet is. If you're looking for someone to get in the later picks, a guy that can come in and have a critical play on third downs, as well as, don't forget, Kenneth Walker is coming off an injury and has already been injury plagued during this training camp. I think he's someone to watch out for. And of course, we could talk about a Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson, things like that. Quentin Johnson is going to help the Chargers move on from the likes of Keenan Allen after this year. But, there's other names. Dalton Kincaid is another one that I think he's going to fit right into that Buffalo Bills offense, and he's going to eventually be the starter, probably by week 8 or 9, where Dawson Knox is going to be more of your blocking tight end, and Dalton Kincaid is going to be lined up more in the slot, and he's going to eventually become their number 2. But the top 2 sleepers for myself are Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zach Charbonnet, and if we're talking about a guy that nobody really knows because they don't watch a lot of college football, I'm going to throw one at you, and it's going to be Tank Dell. Rookie wide receiver out of the University of Houston, drafted by the Houston Texans, had a great first preseason. He's fast. He's small, but he's fast. And he's someone that, if you're looking for a flex player later on in the draft, he's someone I would definitely look at. He's going to be a great number 2, possibly number 3 receiver in that offense. They still need a possession receiver. They are welcoming back John Mechie this year, a guy who thankfully was able to defeat what he went through, getting the sad news that made him miss his rookie year. But I'm huge on Tank Dell. And if people don't know who he is, pull up Google, look up his highlights from his time in Houston. The guy can play. The guy can play some football. So those are guys I'm going to be looking at, paying real close attention to. I could say Tank Bigsby, he's going to be good, teaming up with Travis Etienne over in Jacksonville. But, time will tell, man. It's exciting. It's an exciting time of year that is now fantasy football draft time. Most of the drafts are starting this weekend. NFL preseason is going into week 2. We got 2 weeks left of preseason. Then we have the bye week, and then hey, it's time for kickoff, man. So yeah, I'm excited. But those are my guys.
Couple of other guys I'm going to mention, and correct me on how to pronunciate this guy's name. Devin Achan, is that correct?
Devin Achian, yes.
Okay.
Rookie running back out of Miami.
He's similar.
I'm sorry, out of A&M.
For the Miami Dolphins. Similar body type to his backfield mate, Raheem Mostert. And, we've spoken about the issues with Miami last year, not running the ball enough. I believe you have a legitimate three-headed monster. But when I think about upside, I actually think that this kid could take the brunt of the carries and actually be their lead horse midway through the year. So definitely, like in our particular league, a guy that you could probably score. And even later than that, I wouldn't recommend for this guy to be a starting tight end, but he could definitely be a steal late in the draft where he could potentially be your starting tight end next year.
Michael Mayer.
I'm talking, yes, Michael Mayer, Notre Dame. I have a feeling that he's going to acclimate very well into the Raiders system. And I also think that's why the Raiders, to a level, felt comfortable making that deal with the New York Giants, moving on from Darren Waller, who was a perennial Pro Bowler prior to a couple of years ago where he started having some injuries. Giants definitely take a risk moving a third, but given the nature of the Giants offense and how bad they need a playmaker, I do think that also will work. I wouldn't call Darren Waller a sleeper by any means. I will call him a risky play because of his injury history. But when healthy in the year 2023, I still think Darren Waller is a top 5 tight end option, and he would be a hell of a steal for anyone if he stays healthy. I think in the Giant offense, very strong possibility. He leads that group in receiving touchdowns. Quarterbacks that are potentially on the rise. Justin Fields goes without saying. He's not a secret anymore. Lesser known in terms because he hasn't taken a snap yet. I actually believe that Anthony Richardson, while it's going to be a little risky and definitely inconsistent, if Jonathan Taylor returns to form, I actually believe that this kid could be a surprising rookie this particular year. Rookie of the year candidates, it's going to be tough for anyone, in my opinion, to jump Bijan Robinson on offense, but we shall see because, you can't account for a potential injury. You shouted out Charbonnet already. I do tend to believe that Zach Charbonnet not only is going to be a factor, I also think that there's a possibility that he could steal the job from Kenneth Walker. Pete Carroll has proven in the past that he is not afraid to ride the hot hand or the healthy hand for that matter. And
he's also not afraid to go away from the hot hand, as I'm talking about Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, because he's the last running back that they've had that has had like true superstar notoriety value. But I mean, you've seen this team over the years, 5th and 4th running backs because of so many injuries and still being able to play their brand of football. So it's a credit to the coaching staff. You look at Russell Wilson without Pete Carroll last year. You look at Geno Smith with him. Now Russ gets another legendary coach in the form of Sean Payton. So I do believe that late quarterback pick, Russell Wilson, might have a bounce back year as well. Keeping it on the theme of football.
And I will say before you transition, if you're in a keeper league looking for the tight end position, this year would be the year with the amount of rookies. You talk about, obviously, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, but then there's Sam Laporta, there's Schoonmaker over with the Cowboys, there's Luke Musgrove over. There's a list of tight ends in this year's. Darnell Washington, another one. There's plenty of guys to get late that will eventually be the starting tight ends on their respective teams. Going back to Devon Achane, he's a guy that reminds me so much of Jamal Charles. He ran a 4.32 40 at the combine. The guy has got the explosive speed. And not only that, he's got another gear once he breaks through the first line of defense. This is fun, man. I love it, dude. And then, we talk about running backs. Another one to keep an eye on is Kendre Miller. He's someone that's quiet, but if you're looking for a Jamal Williams,
with the Kamara suspension, it opens up the door off the jump.
Absolutely. And if you're talking about the Bears, if you're looking for that running back, a Jamal Williams style of running back that's going to be brought in a lot on 3rd and shorts, but more importantly, 3rd and goals, I'm talking about Roshan Johnson out of the University of Texas with the Chicago Bears. That guy has been showing up in camp. He's been doing exactly what he did at UT, but unfortunately, he was sitting behind the likes of Bijan Robinson, that he was not able to take the full load, which means one big thing. He's coming in fresh for the Chicago Bears, a team that loves to run the damn ball. And when you got a guy like Roshan Johnson, he could easily be a guy that's going to get you 8 to 12 touchdowns this year as a rookie.
Well, the way you basically described him to the best comparison possible, because he could be a touchdown vulture. But let me ask you this: out of Herbert and Foreman in that backfield, it looks like it's going to be kind of like a lightning and thunder kind of deal, Mixon, Roshan. But who do you think out of those two is going to take over the lead duty, or just you think it's a week-to-week thing and who's the hot hand thing? I tend to believe that Foreman is going to win that in the long run.
I think what the approach is going to be, I think Khalil Herbert is going to be your starting running back, but it's going to be an even mix of carries. Foreman can come in, especially late in the game, where you think.
Well, yeah, he's a put-away guy like a Damian Harris.
Yes,
which did it for the Patriots. Now he's going to try to do it for Buffalo. Another guy that's sharing the backfield with Dalvin Cook's younger brother.
Yeah, and when I look at those two, it reminds me so much of when Dallas had Julius Jones and Marion Barber. Julius was getting the ball earlier in the game. Marion was coming out and finishing those games off. That's how I could see Foreman and Khalil Herbert working together. Khalil Herbert brings that presence in the passing game. That's the one thing. I seriously see a situation where we're going to see a lot of scenarios where you're going to have Justin Fields lined up in the shotgun and having both of them in the backfield with him, and you're going
to see split slot sets. And I also believe that this is a team that might very well lead the league in rushing, because you also have to account for the fact that Justin Fields could potentially run for anywhere between 750 to 1,000 yards in his own right. So it's gonna be interesting, similar to what we saw Philly do last year. Now, no, Chicago does not have the O-line of the Philadelphia Eagles. Nobody does, but Justin Fields is just gradually becoming a bigger and bigger talent. And unlike other guys that kind of got looped into, they could run, but they can't really pass, Justin Fields doesn't have those issues. I'm not picking on one particular player, former MVP, who has been looped into that, but I'm going to say this: Justin Fields has the total package. It's only a matter of time until he sets the league on fire. I do want to get back to the Jets. Speaking of fire, we're going to talk about cooking with some gasoline here. Does the addition of Dalvin Cook any more so than a week ago make them more closer of a Super Bowl contender? That's my question. I'm going to give you my answer, and then I'll bump it to you. While I do believe that this New York Jets defense is going to be a top 5 unit, and while I do believe that Aaron Rodgers, he's not going to have the blow-up kind of MVP years that he's had in Green Bay, but I think you're looking at least 31, 32 touchdowns, right around 4K. And they're going to be mixing in a quality run game, and I believe that the passing touchdowns might be down a bit, but the turnovers are also going to be down. My main concern with Rodgers, and you've shared this as a thought too, is how often is he going to get hit, because that offensive line still has some big question marks, and that's a very physical division where they're going to be running into the Miamis and the Buffaloes, and yes, even New England does have a good defense. And not to mention some premier matchups, and they play the Chiefs and some of the other characters in the AFC. So I would have to say that in terms of a holdup outside of natural injuries, that would be my main worry for this New York Jets team. I think Garrett Wilson is easily your number one, and I think they have a lot of familiarity. The guy that I'm looking at with the Jets to potentially have a blow-up year and emerge as their second best receiver is actually McCole Hardman.
I'm going Allen Lazard on that one. I think Allen Lazard is in the perfect situation. I mean, so is Hardman. But when I see Allen Lazard and I see the chemistry he's already developed with Aaron Rodgers, and now you have Garrett Wilson by your side, as well as Randall Cobb, who's always been Aaron Rodgers' safety net. And then you still have McCole Hardman, who's the guy that's going to, if you go and try to double Garrett and are accounting for Lazard, he's going to be deep by the time you blink, So
and there's a chemistry. There's obviously a natural chemistry there. When I think about a guy like Randall Cobb, I think he's there more along for the ride because, he and AR8 are very close. I believe that it was interesting what you mentioned to me about Bakhtiari. Maybe they'll strike a second deal with the Green Bay Packers. That would be wild. It's hard for me to fathom it right now, but you don't know. It depends on how good the deal is. The Jets are all in right now, so I think they're looking at it as the sand is going down on the time, and they have like probably 2 years, 3 years max to get this shit done. Because I think that's about as much as Rodgers could give them, 3 quality years, two at minimum.
And when I think about the New York Jets, to answer the question, yes, I do believe that puts them over the top. Before the acquisition of Dalvin Cook, I thought that this division was the Dolphins. Now you add Dalvin Cook in there, and I think it is now the Jets division. But again, it is that offensive line that is the only thing I'm worried about. It is keeping Aaron Rodgers safe, because we saw last year with the Packers where he made a career of getting out of the pocket and running and picking defenses apart. Last year, it wasn't the same. And it might also be because of the lack of talent, having a couple of rookie receivers and Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson out there. But fact of the matter is, Aaron Rodgers' body is a year older. He's not 28, 29, 33. He's old. And by quarterback terms, he's got 2 years left, maybe.
It's similar. It's similar to when Brett Favre ended up over there with the Jets. Mm-hmm. The only difference is that this is Rodgers' final stop in the NFL. Where for Rodgers, it was for Favre, it was an intermediate move to ultimately play with Brad Childress and the Minnesota Vikings. I have said this before. I'll say it again. If Brett Favre wasn't so stubborn and would have stayed with the New York Jets, I actually believe that the Jets would have made a Super Bowl one of those 2 years. Because when you look at those 2 title game participant Jets, 2010 as well as 2009, the biggest weakness on those teams was the quarterback position. Had Favre hung around, I think we would have got the Favre versus Green Bay game that everybody wanted. And it's crazy. So Aaron Rodgers wins the Super Bowl in 2010. And the previous year, were it not for a very poor decision on Brett Favre's part, the Vikings probably win the Super Bowl the year before. Point to be made, if he stays with the Jets, I believe that you would have got that Green Bay versus Favre angle, and it would have been really good, similar to what people wanted with Montana and Young, but unfortunately they just kept getting the Bills. Zeke to Gillette.
Before we go to that, what people are finally going to get, though, is the Aaron Rodgers versus Patrick Mahomes that people wanted to see in the Super Bowl, and now we're probably going to see in the championship game.
We'll see. It's been a curse. Every time they're supposed to play, something happens.
Yeah, no doubt about that. No, look, Jets need to get Bakhtiari, because when I talk about
Zach Wilson versus Mahomes.
Oh God, no! When I talk about the playoffs,
Zach Wilson versus Blaine Gabbert.
Hey, that'd be a good one. A good old 13-9 final score.
I wouldn't even want to see that in Madden. Go ahead.
No, look at the AFC and look at the talent out there. You're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and having Chris Jones that you have to account for. You talk about the Buffalo Bills and Von Miller. You talk about the Miami Dolphins and Jalen Phillips or Bradley Chubb. You talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, what they bring. The Baltimore Ravens, what they bring. The Cincinnati Bengals, what they bring. These are all teams that can get to the quarterback. And if you're the New York Jets, yes, you're going to have a great defense. You're going to have a great offense. But you still, when it comes down for the playoffs, if you cannot protect your quarterback, you're not going to win. And most of these teams that are going to be in the playoffs in the AFC, they all have defenses that can get to the quarterback. Hell, even the Chargers with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. I'll leave it at that. Anyways, yeah, sorry about that. Zeke.
All right. Zeke in Gillette. I actually like this pickup. I know a lot of people have been clowning on it, looking at it that Zeke has nothing left to offer. And when you look at a team like the New England Patriots that lost Damian Harris, that literally has a glaring need for a running back who can get the short yards, for a running back who could pick up the blitz packages at an elite level. That is something that Ezekiel Elliott still does at an elite level. I actually think that while the Patriots are probably still the fourth best team in this division, I think this acquisition could actually get them a couple more wins. We have not done our AFC East preview yet. That is actually the next divisional show that we will be planning either on or right after our fantasy draft. It's going to be coming up soon. We're going to keep you posted on that. But the point is, the New England Patriots needed to figure out a way to cut a little bit of gap. When you look at this division, you got 3 quarterbacks that are all Pro Bowl caliber, and then you have Mac Jones. So what do the Patriots need to do better than everybody else, or at least just as good? They need to be able to run the football, win the time of possession battles. The Patriots do have a pretty good defense. I like this new look Zeke. I mean, dude, he doesn't look like an Ewok anymore. And I don't give two shits. I don't give 2 shits about what anybody does with their hair. But I think it's a little more than that. I think Zeke is coming in refreshed, ready to play football. And I do think that he has a little bit more in the tank than people were willing to give him credit for. I think he's going to play well with New England. And like I said, a guy like him, used in a more limited way, I actually think could pay bigger dividends at the end of games, similar to some of the other players that we named, guys that help put games away in crunch time. That's something that Zeke has done very well over the course of his career, even when Tony Pollard ultimately became the main dude in that Dallas backfield. So it's something worth keeping an eye on. He's also wearing his college number, which I think is kind of cool. And I think when you're a young quarterback, and when there's a lot of doubts that you don't have that number 1 receiver, you need all the help you can get. So obviously the Patriots O-line needs to perform, and their running backs need to step up. And I think if those things happen, potentially the Patriots could be a little better than people see. I still have them finishing 4th, more than likely, but like I said, we got the preview coming up.
Yeah, with the addition of Zeke, look, this team still does not have an identity, but the addition of Zeke tells me that they know they are not going to be able to go out there and put up 27, 34 points a game, maybe not even 24. So in order to do that, like you said, they're going to have to be able to run the ball, control the time of possession, and limit opposing teams and the amount of offensive possessions they get. Because if we're seeing a New England offense go out there and get a 3-and-out, first down followed by a 3-and-out, and then you're down 14-0, 17-3, that type of stuff, it's going to be a long year for
you. They don't have the kind of offense that could consistently play from behind. And while we speak on offensive outages, there's no better time for a segue than this. Is it time to clean house? Why the Yankees have taken such a plunge from contenders to just plain awful? I'm going to try to simplify this, and I'm going to try to get into the bigger root problems. I think for far too long, the New York Yankees have used the combination of Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge to kind of mask the bigger issues in this lineup. We saw it last year when Aaron Judge was chasing the Roger Maris record, which he ultimately achieved, becoming the all-time American League single-season home run leader with 62. But we noticed at Zappy in a lot of games that teams figured out that you can, in certain situations, pitch around him, roll the dice with the rest of that lineup, and you will get out of some of these jams. I almost think it's comical at this point of Aaron Judge's career, given the ineptitude of the other guys in the lineup, that he's not at least hitting third. I get the whole get him an extra at-bat thing, but at this juncture, I think the man should be batting third once they actually figure out what they're doing. You talk about a team with an identity crisis. The Yankees, it's just a weird caveat here. They have one of the best bullpens in all of Major League Baseball, but they only have one quality starter that does it consistently. Nestor Cortez has been too hurt to claim that he's had any kind of real success this year. Frankie Montes has yet to pitch this year. You have Clark Schmidt, who I think has been rather respectable in expanded duty. Domingo Germán, we know what happened with him. Carlos Rodon, looking like every bit of a bust. So I guess the message here is that the starters have not gotten it done. Moving it over to the lineup, you go into the season, Josh Donaldson is your starting third baseman. His career in pinstripes, if not in general, is over. DJ LeMahieu, former 2-time batting champion, completely inept this year. I have seen enough out of Gleyber Torres to keep him around. I've seen enough out of IKF to keep him around. But when I think about the bigger root problems, the Yankees have been in denial for too long, marching out the same team. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is literally the definition of insanity. And I think Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone, I think it's time to cut them both loose. Having said that, I think Aaron Boone falls on the sword first because Brian Cashman has a bigger success and a bigger track record to better times in Yankee lore. Garrett Cole is an interesting one because while I think he is very satisfied with the Yankees, and even though it's an off year, I do think he loves being in New York. This is similar to what the Mets dealt with. They dealt Scherzer. They didn't re-up DeGrom. He signed but your boys, unfortunately got hurt. They also dealt Verlander. This is a situation going into next year where the Yankees might have to ask themselves, is it time to trade Garrett Cole if they're in a similar position that they are right now? Giancarlo Stanton, in order to move on from him, he would have to waive his no-trade clause. And I think interest in a player like him, lukewarm at best, because let's keep into consideration that roughly around the deadline, he was still coming off the injuries, and that does play a factor in whether or not a team wants to take a chance on a guy like that. I still think the perfect destination for a guy like Stanton could be Dodger Stadium, it could be Petco, somewhere on the West Coast. But I think it's time for the Yankees to completely tear it down. They need to go young. They need to truly find out what they have. And the only way you're going to find out is you got to put these kids to the test and you got to put them into the fire. It is time for the New York Yankees to start trusting their scouts and trusting that some of these kids that are collecting dust belong on the big league level. It's not, and that's the only way that you can truly find this out. But the thing with the Yankees, there's a pressure to at least at minimum make the playoffs every year. And I think that actually retards their growth because of the fact that instead of doing things the long window patient way, they are always looking for the quick fix. And I think the Yankees, it reminds me of George when he used to try to buy everything. When did we get good? When did we get right? When George was suspended and when they did the cultivation from the farm on up, rant over, sorry.
I mean, where do I start here? The top three payrolls in baseball this year are the Yankees, Mets, and Padres.
Yeah, what has that done?
And look at what's happening with them. And then I'm going to put it to you this way. For a span of 6 years or so, the Atlanta Braves had the best farm system. And now we see it all being put together as they want to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And then we see the Baltimore Orioles. I know Idris has said the Orioles are the Orioles. I don't believe that. I think the Orioles have finally arrived. And the scary thing is, all their youth is not even playing yet. They're only going to get better. And they did it because the last couple of years, they've had the best farm system.
And let's be honest, Lady Luck's been on their side a little because you've seen the horrific meltdown, not meltdown in terms of performance, but meltdown in terms of poor luck that the Tampa Bay Rays have dealt with. Whether it's injury or poor decisions off the field, it has really come up in flames after such a promising start. I mean, anything's possible in October, and I still think they're a playoff team. But I got to say, man, the Baltimore Orioles are most definitely for real. And the two teams out west, your team and the Astros, and that's where this leads to this. Who the hell could beat the Braves?
No one.
I tend to agree. You want to hear some?
I mean, I'll put it to you this way. As much, I'm a huge Rangers fan. You know that. Hey, let me add this part about the Yankees. You know what this feels like? I just watched the Bronx Tale the other day. And, what does he talk about?
I already know where you're going.
Last place, and
I already know where you're going.
Look, Yankees, it's since 1995. You guys have not been under 500 this late in the year. You've got to, like you said, you've got to blow it up. You start with Garrett Cole. You keep Aaron Judge. You trade Garrett Cole and get yourself a lot of assets, especially in the pitching realm. He's going to get you a lot of good eventual starting pitchers. Now,
sadly, I don't think they're going to do it.
They're not going to. No, absolutely not. Because no matter what, it's New York Yankees, and you still have Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge, and that is enough to say we are a World Series team, or at least a playoff team. As far as the West goes, my Rangers have a 2.5 game lead going into this weekend series against the Milwaukee Brewers. The Astros have been fighting, but they have not been able to close the gap. They came within 1 game, and then they fell back down to 4, 3.5, 4.5. It's been going back and forth. But no matter what, the Astros are still the dogs of the American League. They are the World Series champs. They know how to do it when the time comes to it. The Rangers could very well finish first place in the division, could very well finish first place in the American League, but I still don't trust them to beat Houston because Houston knows how to do it. They've been doing it time and time again. However, Houston made the World Series 2 years ago, and who was the team that beat them? Atlanta. If Atlanta does not meet a Phillies team that was hot, I mean, they were riding a storm, Atlanta probably wins the World Series last year again, because I thought they were a better matchup against Houston personally, not Philly. Who beats the Atlanta Braves? I'll give you the straight answer: the Atlanta Braves. That's it. It's baseball is baseball. You could be the best team, but there's always that time where you can just hit that slump, and you never want to do it, and you never want to do it come playoff time.
It's interesting, and it's an if, and it's an unlikely, actually. But if the Miami Marlins were to get hot and just sneak in, I actually believe that on a personnel level, they can, believe it or not, give the Braves a good series, a more realistic matchup, and a team that I think could be a little scary for them. You just said it, the Philadelphia Phillies. The Dodgers, I'm sorry, dude. I don't care what they look like on paper and what their record is. I have just seen too many Octobers go up in flames for me to feel any kind of way about them. They remind me very much so of the Atlanta Braves of the 90s, who had the best teams on paper year in and year out, but always were a bridesmaid or were a consolation bridesmaid in the NL championship series. I do want to hit one more thing on the Yankees, and I'm going to kind of intertwine it into a little bit of a story about my dad. It's funny. I've seen so many spoiled Yankee fans take to social media, and you would think that their lives are literally riding on the Yankees going through a rough patch. Ultimately, you said it best. Garrett Cole, Aaron Judge at minimum playoffs. And the reality is, if Aaron Judge doesn't miss 2 months, this team probably is in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But I think it's gotten to the point where this particular cast and regime of Yankee baseball, it's becoming unacceptable to just be a playoff team. They've got to do more. I don't think Garrett Cole leaves because I think the Yankees are going to try to do a bit of a half rebuild. Like, they're going to try to get younger, but they're also going to try to keep spending. They're going to try to find that happy medium. I still don't think in the end it works. I think the right way is to tear it down, but this is what I'm getting at. Yankee fans bitching and complaining about this is the worst, and this is the worst team of the Yankees I've ever seen. I'm like, whoa, back that up. Let me tell you something. I became a Yankee fan during an era where the New York Mets were head and shoulders better than the New York Yankees. But it was so much fun going to the stadium during these times because, first of all, the stadium was rather empty. I got to move around, really learn the stadium with my father. But ultimately, what made it really great for me and what carried me into being an even bigger Yankee fan was just getting the great history lessons. First time I ever went into Monument Park, you never forget the first time you go there. Now, granted, the first time I went there versus what it looks like now, two different things, because you have a lot more plaques there now. But, seeing Don Mattingly play, who in my opinion is the finest defensive first baseman that I've ever seen play live, I'm going to give him that. Just a phenomenal ball player who played on such a horrific team for too long, and then when they finally got good, he was sadly too old. But when I see these Yankee fans crying and complaining, I'm like, guys, I saw the late 80s, and even worse, I saw the early 90s when they were really, really bad. The Stump Merrill, Dallas Green Yankees. Ultimately, similar to what I know Cowboy fans have dealt with Jerry, it is a similar philosophy and a similar frustration amongst the two fan bases, is that they know how loyal the fan bases are of those two particular, talking about the Cowboys and the Yankees alike. And they know that no matter what product they put out there, the people are going to show. And I do think that that's part of the issue in itself.
I've got 27 reasons why, for the Yankees at least, why the fans continue to show. You know,
but to be fair, up until say less than 5 years ago, the Dallas Cowboys were tied for the most Lombardis. You know, to be fair, even with your 2-decade list.
Not 5 years ago. We'll go back to the early 2000 when the Steelers last won in 2000. What was that?
Oh wait.
So since 2008, that's when the Steelers have had 6 Super Bowls. So
yeah, you're right. New England more recently. So I guess because New England has had the more recent success, maybe that I was getting a little foggy with Pittsburgh when they won number 6, or maybe it's because I didn't want to remember it because Plaxico Burress fucking shot himself. I don't know.
Look, some teams rebuild, others reload. The Yankees tend to reload, but it's time to rebuild and reload at the same time. You have to bring Austin Wells up in the next couple weeks. You need to get a good 30 games out of him, 25 to 30 games to see what you have with him. You need to bring Jason Dominguez up. You've got to bring these young talents up.
This is part of the reason, Trey Sweeney, another guy, this is part of the reason why I'm not freaking out about the bigger picture, because I've seen situations like this where once these kids start getting that invaluable experience, things start turning and they start happening a lot quicker. I think this was a poor approach. And like I said, people could say whatever they want, but with all the injuries that the New York Yankees sustained this year, I don't think anybody could truly say what would have shaped up, because it didn't happen. You need to be healthy. You need to have guys that actually have some continuity in order to expect to get something done. The Yankees, while I don't absolve them from their own issues, have not been healthy all year. You can pick a position and you will find an injury.
And, you know, there's not many teams that can overcome this kind of adversity. Like you said, you guys have had a lot of injuries, starting with the likes of Aaron Judge. It took almost more than half of the season before you even saw Carlos Rodon throw a pitch.
And then you regretted seeing it happen.
But, you know, it's not every day we got a team like the Rays that lose 4 starting pitchers and they all are having Tommy John surgery,
but
and yet
once
they're
again,
still
sir,
right there.
This speaks on the importance of believing in what you have in your AAA, your AA affiliates. Like when I think about the Yankees, this is another thing that makes me want to punch the wall sometimes. You have one of the best bullpens, if not the best bullpen, consistently in Major League Baseball over the last few years. But you've had issues with the starters. Did it ever occur to anybody to possibly take a page out of Kevin Cash's book and once in a while have an opener out of your pen to see if that maybe starts working itself out? And then maybe having a guy like a Herman, assuming he's not where he is now, or a Severino, that's another thing. He's fried. But the point is that there are other approaches that the Yankees have not done that makes me kind of laugh to a level. I mean, they did it with Michael King super recently. But this is something that I feel should have been explored for a while. Because when you have that excellent pen, wouldn't it be nice to use some of these guys in tie games as opposed to coming in when you're down 3? We already know how terrible your offense is. That has been well documented. And that's the most depressing part of all. You have a guy like Aaron Judge who literally broke an American League record not even a year ago, but you cannot muster up any offense beside him. Can you imagine if Judge hit in a lineup similar to what they had in the 90s, what his RBIs would look like?
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even trying to be a dick about it, but I feel like this dude would be closer to 200 RBIs or maybe 170, you know, putting up those kind of absurd years where it's like you have 80 RBIs in each half of the year or even better. I do believe that in the right lineup, Judge could make something like that happen. But I must say this, and if my father was here, he would agree with me. It's time to go young, because that's one thing that my father legitimately cried for until it really happened during that era of Yankees baseball was, bringing up the talent. You said it. The Atlanta Braves have proven that is the way. And the New York Yankees, it's pretty expensive to be that mediocre. And not for nothing, guys, and I say this too, baseball is the Steinbrenner's business. It's not other business. It's baseball. This isn't Uncle Stevie. Uncle Stevie has money to burn. Let's not lose sight of that either. Uncle Stevie has money to burn.
But he doesn't need to burn it. That's the problem. I think we see more parity in baseball. That's not going to do it for you. I have a question for you, though. We're going to keep it in the AL East. Juan DeFranco. What do you think?
I don't know enough to really make a solid opinion on it.
It's unbelievable. Another loophole, another sense of adversity that this Rays team has to go through. And what are they doing? They're still winning.
Yeah. I mean, it speaks volumes on the manager. The Uncle Stevie thing, the Hal Steinbrenner thing. I've said this to you before. I'll say it to you again. It's a weird happy medium, because sometimes it's like you can lead or be amongst the teams that have the highest salaries. And I always say this with the luxury tax. It's a weird place to be, because it's like you can spend just enough, but when you go that 30 or 40 million over, you're essentially feeding your competition at that point. So it is a very weird situation when you're in that kind of, like, people say, oh, go the Moneyball route. That would never happen. That would never happen.
You bring up a very, very, very good point there that a lot of people don't understand of how baseball works in the luxury tax. When you're spending that much money, you're also giving money to other teams.
And these are teams that are coming for you next, because I keep alluding to the conversation I had with Sergio, and he's been proven right over the course of the year. He said it best. He said the Yankees are very good at running a business, not so good at running a baseball club.
Sure. That's the same world. And it's funny you're saying that about the Yankees. It's the same world that the Cowboys are living in with Jerry Jones. Great businessman, probably the best businessman out of all the owners, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, hockey, soccer, whatever the case may be. But if it wasn't for the likes of Jimmy Johnson and what he did with all those draft day trades to be able to acquire multiple starters, and which led to the eventual 3-time Super Bowl champs in the 90s, Jerry Jones was non-existent. Jerry Jones has been great for football. Steinbrenner was great for baseball, but as we see what happened in football, once the salary cap was introduced, Dallas has not been able to win one since that. They had to take a different approach. Finally, they bring a guy like Will McClay in, who is now the leader of scouting for us, and we have had the most players drafted in the NFL that have made the Pro Bowl. We keep our players. We've seen it time and time again. The Yankees are not taking that approach. That's the approach they need to take. It's like you said, trust the system, trust the process. You draft the guy for a reason. You don't go to the draft and say, I'm going to draft him just because we need to draft somebody. You draft the guy because you believe.
Well, to speak on that for a moment, this is an organization that a lot of people didn't even know drafted Garrett Cole, but he didn't start his career with the Yankees. That in itself, look at Ezekiel Duran. Look what we got Joey Gallo for him. That was another genius move.
And that was actually my first time being on the show, was right after the Joey Gallo trade, and I said I am excited about it because I love what we got out of Ezekiel Duran. What is he now today to the Rangers? Well, for one, he's been a great utility player for us. We just lost Josh Young for 6 weeks with the fractured thumb, and Duran has came right into the third base starting position and has not missed a beat. And then I looked at other players we got from you guys. What did we do? We gave you Joey Gallo, and we went and got players out of your farm system. We gave you IKF in return. And if you ask me, do I rather have IKF or Durant? I'm going to say Ezekiel all day long. He has been having a much better year compared to IKF. Those are the things that the Yankees.
I wouldn't even compare them, just for the sheer fact that IKF is the ultimate utility. Well, they're both utility men. It was a bad trade on the Yankees' part, bottom line, and I will not even for a second deny it. The Yankees thought they were getting a perennial 40 home run guy. It just didn't work out. We already know the story. That's really all I got in terms of this 2-minute mark. Gonna make a quick mention about something here. One of the I wouldn't call it a talent or a skill, just maybe something I inherited. But something that my dad that I miss so much is that road trips. You referenced the Bronx Tale with the City Island trip. My old man would like quiz the shit out of me on baseball trivia, football trivia. My dad was a diehard, devout Green Bay Packer fan, but he's also the reason why I'm so educated on the team that I root for, the New York Football Giants. He instilled in me so much of that is why, like, for instance, just let's say getting into the beginning of podcasting, I didn't know anything about formatting, how to do any of this. It was kind of like jump in the water, see what happens. You'll figure it out as you go along. But one thing that I will forever be indebted to my dad for is that just the conversations in general, just over the course of being sports fans, I have always had the confidence to just walk into any room, whether it's my show, somebody else's show, or a guest on somebody's show, and just be able to always have that confidence that I'm going to make a great point and I'm going to be comfortable no matter where I am, whether it's in Arlington, whether it's in my living room, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it goes without saying, dude, he literally was the inspiration for me wanting to take this on. 6 years on Monday. Hard to believe, but very thankful that I'm going to be hanging with a lot of the crew, you know, definitely good company during what I must admit is a very tough week.
It's a tough week, but one that you should celebrate rather than mourn. I'll say that, you know, I look at death as a blessing. People live, you know, the one guarantee that every human has is that one day we won't be here anymore. We don't know when our time is. So you got to take every moment you can, take the advice that your parents give you, appreciate those special moments. And I'll leave it at that.
And that doesn't apply to Tom Cruise. Until next time, for Mr. Mike Zappy, we are out. Thank you for watching.